The sun was still clawing its way over the jagged hills when Cole Mercer swung into the saddle and turned his horse toward town, dust puffing up behind him like a warning he did not yet understand. He told himself he was riding for whiskey and nothing more. The bottle on his shelf had gone dry 2 nights before, and the cabin felt emptier without it. Too quiet, too full of memories that creaked louder than the floorboards. Cole had not spoken to another soul in days, and he liked it that way. Liked the way the open land asked nothing of him except to keep breathing. He tugged his hat low and pressed his heels in, not knowing that this ride would carry him straight into a future he had sworn he did not want. Cole Mercer was a man shaped by loss and weather, broad-shouldered, tight-jawed eyes the color of storm clouds that never quite broke. The war between North and South had passed him by, but it had taken his father all the same. Fever did not care which side a man stood on. His mother followed soon after, leaving Cole with a stretch of hard land and a cabin that smelled of smoke and solitude. He learned early that horses were easier company than people, that fences could be fixed but hearts stayed cracked. So he worked his ranch and kept his distance, rode into town only when he had to. And today he had to. The road to Dry Creek wound like a tired snake. Cutting through scrub and stone, Cole let his thoughts drift, the way they always did when the miles stretched long. He remembered laughter once, a woman's laugh, soft and surprised. But he shoved the memory aside. Those things were for other men now, men with families and Sunday dinners. Cole was content with beans, beef, and the burn of whiskey to keep the nights short. He did not notice the way the wind shifted, or how the air seemed to hold its breath as he crossed the shallow creek just outside town. Dry Creek appeared in a scatter of buildings and hitching posts, the saloon standing like a promise at the center of it all. Cole dismounted and tied his horse, nodding once to a man he barely knew. Inside the saloon, the smell of sweat and spirits wrapped around him, familiar and rough. He pushed through the swinging doors and headed straight for the bar. His plan was simple: buy the whiskey, drink one to dull the edge, ride home before dark. He did not plan on the woman standing near the far wall, her hands folded tight around a small carpet bag, her eyes scanning the room like she was looking for something she had already lost. She did not belong in Dry Creek. That much was clear to Cole even before she turned and met his gaze. Her dress was plain but clean, travel-worn but mended with care. Her hair pulled back, neat though a few strands had escaped. She looked at the men around her not with fear but with caution, like someone who had learned to measure danger quickly. Cole felt an unexpected tightening in his chest and turned back to the bar, annoyed with himself. Women brought trouble and questions, and he wanted neither. It was the bartender who spoke her name, Clara Whitmore, said in a voice meant to sound casual but edged with curiosity. She had arrived on the morning stage, alone, asking about work, asking about rooms, asking questions that earned only shrugs. Dry Creek was not kind to strangers, and less so to women without husbands. Cole listened without meaning to, heard that her uncle had died, that the land she had been promised did not exist, that she had nowhere else to go. He took a long pull from the glass. The bartender slid his way. The whiskey burned but did not quiet the strange pull. He felt trouble found him anyway. It always did. A pair of men at the far table decided Clara was fair game. Their laughter loud and ugly. One reached for her arm. Cole moved before he thought, his chair scraping back as he stood, his voice low but solid when he told them to let her be. Fists flew, a bottle shattered, and the room erupted. Cole fought like a man with nothing left to lose, quick and brutal. When it was over, the men lay groaning and the room went still. Clara stared at him with wide eyes, gratitude and shock mixing in equal measure outside. The late afternoon light slanted gold and long. Clara thanked him, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. She said she would leave town before nightfall, safer that way. Cole looked at the road stretching empty beyond the buildings, then at her small bag and tired eyes. He heard himself speak words he had never planned to say, offering her a ride, a place to rest, just for the night. She hesitated, then nodded, trusting him in a way that scared him more than any fight ever had. As they mounted and turned toward his ranch, Cole realized he had ridden to town for whiskey, but fate had other cargo in mind. The ride back to Cole Mercer's ranch stretched longer than the miles allowed. Dusk settling slow and heavy over the land. Clara sat behind him on the saddle, careful not to lean too close, yet close enough that Cole could feel the warmth of her through his coat, a presence he had not known in years. Neither of them spoke much. The silence was thick but not uncomfortable, broken only by the creak of leather and the steady rhythm of hooves on dirt. Cole kept his eyes forward, telling himself this was nothing more than a decent thing done for a woman in trouble. But his mind would not settle, thoughts circling like buzzards. When they reached the cabin, Clara dismounted and looked around with a quiet appreciation. The place was rough but solid, smoke curling from the chimney, a lantern glowing faint through the window. Cole felt exposed somehow, as if the simple sight of his life laid bare was more intimate than words inside. The cabin smelled of pine and old smoke. Cole set another log on the fire while Clara smoothed her dress and set her carpetbag by the wall. She thanked him again, softer this time, and said she would not be any trouble. She would leave at first light. He nodded, though something in him tightened at the thought. Supper was simple. Beans warmed on the stove, bread torn by hand. They ate at the small table, the quiet filled with the scrape of spoons and the crackle of fire. Eventually, Clara spoke of her journey, of promises made and broken, of learning too late that a woman alone had little protection in a place like Dry Creek. Cole listened, really listened, surprising himself. When she finished, he told her pieces of his own story. Not all of it, but enough to explain the empty spaces, the land, the loneliness, the whiskey he had gone to town for, and forgotten entirely. Sleep came light and restless for Cole. He took the narrow bed while Clara settled on a pallet near the fire. The knowledge that she was there kept him half awake, listening to her breathing, steady and calm. At dawn he rose early and stepped outside. The cold biting sharp. He worked to keep his hands busy, tending to the horse, checking the fence. When Clara joined him, the sun was already climbing. She looked refreshed despite the hard road behind her. Over breakfast, she spoke plainly. She could not go back to Dry Creek. There was nothing there for her, no work that would not cost her more than it paid. Cole felt the weight of her words settle over him like a coming storm. The truth came out slow but sure. Clara had money enough for a few weeks at most. After that, she would be at the mercy of towns like Dry Creek. Cole knew what that meant, even if she did not say it aloud. The land around his ranch stretched wide and underworked. A woman's hands could help. But more than that, he knew how a married woman was treated differently, respected in ways an unmarried one never was. The thought lodged in his mind and would not let go. It was reckless, foolish even, yet it made a terrible kind of sense. By the time the sun reached its peak, he had made up his mind. Though his heart beat like he was riding into gunfire, Cole did not dress his words in softness. He told Clara exactly what he was thinking. A marriage of convenience, protection for her, help for him, no promises beyond fairness and respect. He said it plain and steady, like a business deal. Clara listened without interrupting, her face unreadable. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. The wind moving through the grass outside seemed loud as thunder. She asked if he expected love. He shook his head, said he did not know how to offer it, only honesty and a roof that would not disappear overnight. Clara surprised him then. She did not recoil or laugh. She said she had hoped for more once, but hope was a luxury she could no longer afford. She wanted safety, dignity, a place to belong. She asked if he would treat her kindly, even if love never came. Cole answered yes without hesitation, because that, at least, he could promise. They sat there facing one another, two strangers bound by circumstance and grit. When she finally agreed, it was with a calm resolve that told Cole she understood the weight of the choice as well as he did. They rode back to town that same afternoon, the irony not lost on Cole. The saloon door swung open, but he passed them by, heading straight for the justice of the peace. Word traveled fast, eyes followed them, whispers sparked. Clara held her head high. Cole kept his hand light but steady at her back. The ceremony was short, almost perfunctory. Vows, spoken without poetry, yet heavy with meaning. When the papers were signed, Cole realized his hands were shaking. Clara's were not. By the time they left Dry Creek, the sun was sinking again, casting long shadows across the road. Clara was Mrs. Mercer now, though the title felt strange on both their tongues. They rode back toward the ranch in silence once more, but it was a different silence than before, weighted with possibility and uncertainty. Cole thought of the whiskey still on, of the life he had known, and the one he had just stepped into without meaning to. Somewhere between town and home he understood the truth of it. He had not come back with a bottle to dull the nights. He had come back with a wife, and nothing in his carefully ordered world would ever be the same again. The first weeks of marriage settled over the ranch like a cautious dawn, slow and uncertain. Cole and Clara moved around one another with care, learning the shape of shared space. She took to the cabin as if it had been waiting for her, sweeping out dust, stitching curtains from spare cloth, planting a small kitchen garden near the creek. Cole watched from a distance at first, unsure how to step into this new life without breaking it. Nights were quiet, but no longer empty. They spoke in low voices over supper, about the weather, the land, small practical things. Yet beneath every word lay the unspoken truth that they were bound together now, not by love but by choice, and choice carried its own weight. Work drew them closer than words ever could. Clara learned the rhythms of the ranch, how to tend chickens, how to mend tack, how to read the sky for signs of coming storms. Cole found himself relying on her sharp mind and steady hands, trusting her judgment in ways he had never trusted another soul. Sometimes he caught her watching him when she thought he would not notice, her expression thoughtful, measuring, as if she were learning him the same way she learned the land. He felt something shift inside his chest, unfamiliar and unsettling, and he buried it beneath long days and harder labor trouble. Rode in on a hot wind one afternoon, wearing the face of a man Clara recognized too well, a former suitor from back east, drawn west by rumors and stubborn pride. He brought questions and thinly veiled accusations, hinting that Clara's marriage was a farce, that she belonged with someone who could give her more than dirt and distance. Cole listened from the porch, his jaw tightening. When the man finally spoke of taking Clara with him, Cole stepped forward, his voice low and final, telling him she was his wife and would stay where she chose. The standoff ended without blood, but the threat lingered like smoke that night. Clara told Cole everything, the life she had left behind, the expectations she had fled, the fear that had followed her west. Cole listened in silence, then did something he had not done in years. He reached for her hand, not out of duty, but because he wanted to. The simple contact sent a jolt through them both. In that moment, the line between arrangement and affection blurred. Neither spoke of it, but something fundamental had changed. The cabin felt warmer, the dark less heavy as summer wore on. The ranch prospered, the land responding to careful tending. Neighbors began to look at the Mercers differently. Clara with her quiet strength, Cole with the softness he had not known he possessed. Laughter found its way into the cabin, tentative at first, then easier. One evening, as they sat watching the sun sink into the hills, Cole admitted the truth he had been avoiding, that he cared for her, not as an obligation but as something deeper. Clara answered with her own confession, that she had come to love the life they were building, and the man beside her love did not arrive like a thunderclap. It grew steady and sure, in shared meals, in long conversations, in the way they reached for one another without thinking. The past loosened its grip. Cole found he no longer needed whiskey to quiet his nights. Clara found peace in the wide open spaces she had once feared. Together they forged something real from what had begun as necessity. Autumn painted the land in gold and rust, and with it came a sense of belonging Cole had never known. The cabin was no longer just shelter, it was home. The laughter, the shared work, the quiet moments of understanding had stitched their lives together stronger than any vow spoken in town. When the first snow dusted the hills, Cole realized he could not imagine the place without Clara, or himself without her by his side. Years later, folks in Dry Creek would still tell the story with a shake of the head and a smile. How Cole Mercer rode to town for whiskey and came back with a wife. They would call it chance or fate, but Cole knew better. It was choice, made in a moment of honesty and carried through with grit and grace, on a hard land that had finally given him something worth holding on to.